you ready to start being visible? My name is Mildred Talabi. I have spent the past decade plus mastering the art of personal branding in my career as a former journalist, PR and communications professional, and in my business, which has taken on various forms over the years. I now spend my time championing and coaching women to increase their influence, their income, and their impact through being visible on platforms like LinkedIn and beyond.
I would not have met all these wonderful women had I kept hiding, had I not decided to be visible. Being visible has also made me, what's the word, stand in my voice.
In the Start Being Visible podcast, I am going to be sharing with you my insights into the journey of being visible, as well as bringing you amazing, candid conversations from women in the professional world and the business world who have decided to step out of the shadows and into the limelight in their own work lives.
I think when I first started this, being visible was quite a scary thing for me because I get a bit scared about the criticism. We've had a conversation about this on, you might not remember, but when I first started following you, I remember messaging you saying, I'm really scared about the old white men on LinkedIn telling me to get off LinkedIn. And I still have that underlying fear, but it's getting less and less the more I do.
You are absolutely going to love this podcast. We are going to explore the highs, the lows, and the in-betweens of being visible so that you can be equipped with the courage, the knowledge, and the resources to start being visible in your own life.
Visibility is just showing up as my unique, authentic self and using my voice, to share who I am and what I do, and to speak directly to my ideal clients and my clients.
I cannot wait to bring this to you. So I want you to hit the subscribe button wherever it is you listen to your podcast so that you never miss an episode. And I look forward to seeing you on Start Being Visible. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Start Being Visible. Now, one of the reasons that I started this podcast is because in my line of work as a LinkedIn visibility and personal branding coach for female leaders and business owners, I tend to come across so many amazing women, some of whom I have the pleasure of calling a client. Now, because of this, I've decided to introduce a new segment to the show where, alongside the solo episodes where you get to hear from me and my own insights into your journey to being visible, and the guest interviews where I'll be bringing you amazing conversations with incredible women who have stepped out of the shadows and into the limelight in their work lives, I've also decided to introduce a segment that I'm calling Client Spotlight, just so that you can get to meet some of the incredible women that I get to work with and hear some of their own stories and their journey on their whole journey to be invisible and how transformative it has been and the challenges and all of that's involved. So my guest for this first Client Spotlight is an awesome lady called Monwara Ali. Now, Monwara has a varied career in the public and civil society sector, which spanned over 32 years. Her leadership journey, however, started as a senior youth practitioner at the age of 18. And then she went on to be a trustee, a chair of a company, including doing an internship in South Carolina, USA, where she worked with prisoners on death row at the tender age of 20. Now, Monwara is incredibly passionate about leadership and how instrumental it is to developing services for the community and also about advocating for the most vulnerable. She has led teams of passionate people developing ambitious programs that tackle social inequality and invested in skills, capability, and talent at local level in the UK and in Bangladesh. Monwara is currently the chief executive of Waltham Forest Community Hub, which is a leading charity that's known for their collaborative and agile approach in working at grassroots level. She is also a recent winner of the Prestige Award. And as on top of everything else that Monwara does, she also mentors and coaches women leaders through her Trailblazer program, which she'll tell us more about in just a second. So with all of that said, welcome to the show, Monwara.
Hi, Mildred. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, good evening. It's such a pleasure to have you today and to discuss your incredible work. So I've read your bio and there's so many interesting things about your bio. So can you kind of just bring us up to speed on what it is that you do today in terms of your day job? What does an average day in your life look like?
Well, first of all, thank you, Mildred, for having me. It's so exciting to be on your podcast. I feel so proud to be part of this journey. And in terms of my role, I'm currently a chief exec of a charity in Waltham Forest. It's a small charity, and that's my day job. 4 days a week, that's what I do. Apart from that, I do a bit of coaching and mentoring, particularly and specifically focusing on women. But apart from that, I also do a little bit of international development work. I think you might have mentioned earlier, building homes for widows and divorcees in Bangladesh. So that's what I do in a nutshell. But apart from that, I kind of, anywhere I feel a new project or innovation could possibly be something to look into, I'm interested and I embrace it.
Fantastic. I love that. So leadership is something that is important to you, as you know, as it's clear from the pathway you've taken and from where you started. Why does leadership matter so much to you? What's the I want to say what's the big deal about leadership, but you understand. So what is it about leadership that appeals to you so much?
I think it's understanding myself. And it's one of the things I explore quite deeply in a lot of the social media that I do, as well as my role as a chief exec. One thing I realized when I was reflecting on my own past was most of my roles were leadership roles, except that culturally, I have always been led to believe I need to be, not visible and not hog up space. So it's something that I've always felt that I did in the background. And it makes me realize as well that sometimes when people like myself do not step up, then we do get wrong people in positions. Sometimes those people don't want to be in those positions, but in the absence of people like myself not having the courage to step up, we do end up with the wrong kind of leadership. So I feel it's very important for me because I feel when we can lead ourselves and be more confident, that's when we can lead others. And when my self-awareness led to better self-leadership, it made me realize that this is the starting point and I want to open the doors, or in a way, a bit like what you did with the visibility journey, until you unleash the monster in me. I had no idea. I had no idea like visibility would do what it does. And I can see the influence I'm having on other people through my visibility. I can see that as a chief exec of a small charity, it's so crucial for me to be visible because funders see and hear from me. And I talk about the charity. I talk about a lot of my thoughts are going to be around my values. The culture within our organization is going to become more obvious through senior leaders, conversations, and thoughts that they share, which I think a lot of us in the small charity sector are really shy about. So that's why I think leadership is important for me. I feel that people on a grassroots level, the people working in the coalface, as they say, the charity and the non-profit sector, the sector where actually we don't focus so much on commercial side of money. It's so important that we get the right people, because having the right leaders that are confident and understand their own ability to transform communities, that's the only way change can happen.
There's so many things that you said there that I definitely want us to pick up on, especially around the visibility side of things, because this show is about start being visible. But you mentioned that culturally, you were not expected to be visible. In fact, it's quite the opposite, that you felt that you had to be invisible culturally. Can you talk a bit more about that, and what kind of cultural expectations you felt were placed on you in that element?
I think I've heard friends and family members say things like, oh, I don't like to put my photo on social media because that's showing off. And, I don't want to be showing off. Somebody else has said, some friends have said things like, oh, it's sinful. Also, I think it's not just specific to being Asian or being Muslim, but it's also a gender issue, generally speaking. I feel that culturally we're led to believe that men have those roles, and their role is very much to tell us what to do. And that means they should be the leaders, and we should be the people that work behind the scenes to make them a success. And, that's, if you really think deeply at the crux of what we all know to be, or actually quite often advocate, is behind a successful man is a woman. Even those words, behind a successful man is a woman, just think about what it's saying and what it's telling the generations of women out there, that we're not meant to be taking the roles at the front. We're meant to be from behind. And also quite recently, if we're just thinking about recently, when I traveled abroad, a family member, female family member in quite a high position, said to me, doesn't matter what you do you think you're going to go ahead of men? I wasn't trying to go ahead of men. I just had some ideas, and I acted upon them. And there was nobody to stop me from acting upon my ideas, except her. And I realized, okay, so because of this female, again, gender issues, in a way, she was creating the barrier for women to be in the forefront. So I think that's what I mean when I say culturally we are led to believe, and many women tell me, but we don't see women in positions of responsibility or positions of power. The one or two we do see, there's so much criticism out there about them being either too nice, or their mannerism isn't a certain way, or they're not dressing in a certain way.
Yeah. So, are you married, Monwara, on a personal level?
I am. My husband is very supportive. He always has been.
Because I wanted to understand how that plays out as well in your marriage. Because I do understand some of those cultural implications. I'm from a Nigerian background, so yes, there are the traditional views of sometimes what a man should be doing, a woman should be doing, especially in a husband and wife relationship. So I can totally appreciate that. But your husband is on board. He's all cool with all of this. Is that correct?
He is. He's always been very supportive, but that doesn't change the culture that he and I have been brought up in. I mean, ironically, most of the allies I've had in my life have been men. But those men, even though they've pushed me, I've always thought that it wasn't acceptable for some reason. Even amongst his family, or the like the cultural environment that we're in, I've never felt that I should be, even if I had a better idea, saying it out loud, because that disrespects him. And that's just so interesting, isn't it? But we can see that as something that is wrong when we see it in others, or if we are observing. But when we are living it, we don't even realize it.
Because it's just part of the norm, isn't it? The cultural norms. If you kind of grow up with something, or something's always around you, you don't notice it until you're made to notice, I guess, in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think somebody said recently to me, Monwara, you need to learn how to play the game. And I thought to myself, I've been playing the game since I was a child. I still remember when I was about 14, 15, when my father would come to me and discuss like really important matters and then ask me for my ideas. And it was almost like I was guiding him, mentoring him. And he was in his 60s, 50s, maybe late 50s then. But it's just so interesting that like you could be leading, and I think there are many women like that who are doing all the donkey work, and actually why should they not be paid, and why should they not be in the limelight? And then history just repeats itself. We talk about like changing culture around making a level playing field for men and women, gender equality. But how's that going to happen if the next generation of women don't see women like me and you? That's why I think what you do in terms of the visibility work is so crucial. It's so crucial because until we are out there and people see us, there's no evidence that women can and do leadership. I was very quietly working at Waltham Forest Community Hub for years. I've been there for 13 years now, and I could quietly continue to work. But I think when you kind of invited me to, because I felt like I came to a point where I wanted to make a bigger impact. And obviously, to make a greater impact, you need a greater platform. Otherwise, as a chief exec of a company, or as a woman, if you want to encourage more women to lead, you're only going to hit so many people, and you're only going to make so much impact within your organization. You might have 20 people you're impacting, and a third of them might be women. But if you're on a platform like LinkedIn, or as you know, I also do YouTube, you have a far greater, audience. And it's not about people buying my courses. It's about, somebody heard what I said and decided tomorrow I'm going to go for that interview.
Yeah, impact. I like to talk about 3 things that happen when you increase your visibility. And that's number 1, you increase your influence. Number 2, you increase your income. And number 3, you increase your impact. And they're all important in different ways. And you absolutely have touched on the very reason why I started this podcast and the work that I do in coaching women to be visible is, you just said it spot on, is that whole thing of if we don't see ourselves represented, like we cannot be the light for other people when we're hidden. So my mission is to raise the visibility of women in every industry. So through conversations like these, through the work that I do directly with clients, and through just how the content that I put out on LinkedIn, my books, my resources, etc. So that is absolutely spot on. And I think that's I think we should all make it our mission, to raise our own visibilities, because as we do that, we are shining a light for somebody else. And that in itself is incredibly powerful. So thank you for sharing that. So I do want to talk about how you got to the place of recognizing your need for visibility. But before that, it's what does being visible mean to you? When you use those words, what does that mean to you specifically?
I think being visible to me is very much connected to being authentic. It's visibility. There's a huge amount of vulnerability attached to being visible as well. Most people will feel very uncomfortable being themselves. And one of the things I've done, and maybe perhaps that's why I didn't rise within my own leadership roles far sooner, is that I wasn't comfortable. I wasn't comfortable to share my personal journey as well as my professional journey. Because I don't feel that our personal lives and our professional lives are that much different. How you lead as a professional is very much similar to how you lead on a personal level. My family will probably tell you that themselves. Like, I think if my family had some conversation with my work colleagues or people I've line managed, they'd have a lot to talk about. They'll probably find a lot to complain about, but equally, there'll be a lot of similarities. So I think, yeah, that's what I would say. But I also, Mildred, there's a huge alignment between what I studied. So I studied law, and one of the things I was trained really well in is research and evidence, and the power and how crucial evidence is to winning a case. So the alignment, I see that very much in the whole branding and marketing exercise. When you're visible, that's evidence of your expertise. If you're not visible, nobody knows you exist. And also you cannot prove your expertise. I could write you like a whole book, a long email of all my credentials, and you can see it all on my LinkedIn. Some people won't agree with me, but having a wonderful LinkedIn page with everything on it is not enough. Visibility is more than that. The fact that I've been visible, I've had the right people approach me and say, we'd like to do an article on you because I'm being me. And if we philosophically believe that every human being has been born with a unique purpose and a unique perspective, if we actually believe that, then I have to be myself, because there's nobody out there that's going to be me. And the more I'm being me, some people are reaching out and saying, oh, Monwara, you have a different thought process. And we want to hear more of that. So that's how doors are opening for me, opportunities. I'm connecting with people like globally.
That's yeah, and the being me bit is important because it speaks to that whole thing of authenticity. And a lot of people, especially women, worry about, if I'm visible, that means I have to trade in who I am. It means I have to be somebody else to be visible. It means I have to kind of come outside of myself. There's all these limiting beliefs that I in the conversations that I have with women I've had over the years that keep them from being visible. So you're right, authenticity is a key part of it, because if you're being visible and you're not authentic with it, you won't be able to maintain it, and it will burn you out and you won't enjoy it. And people will see through it eventually because it's not the real you. So visibility and authenticity for me do go hand in hand. So how did you get to that place? Because as you said, you were working as the chief exec of this charity for quite a bit. And then how did you get to that place where it was almost like enough is enough, I need to stop hiding and start being visible? What led you to that point of, and then reaching out to me to start that conversation and that journey to building your visibility on LinkedIn and beyond?
I think it's easy to say, let's blame COVID for everything. Because the pandemic was an excuse. And there was a lot of free time, I felt, where I could do more. And I think in a couple of situations, I sat there waiting to be invited. And I felt quite disregarded. And a few comments about my ability, that really got me. What little I have shared before has been around, most of what has motivated me throughout since my childhood has always been being told you can't do something. And then I just have this really innate, strong self-belief, which can sometimes come across as ego. And I've always been very mindful of that, because, you read a lot about people that are quite self-motivated coming across like narcissistic, or, they think quite highly of themselves. So that's why I've always played quite small, because I can feel it. I also, with my high levels of empathy, I can feel when somebody is feeling like, oh, she's being egotistic or whatever. But I think I just felt that I wasn't doing myself any favors, and I was not doing any favors for any other women like me by just playing small all the time and because I felt that somebody else would feel intimidated, being quiet, just didn't feel right. So that's how it kind of changed for me.
So from what I understand, so it sounds like basically you had to keep yourself down for quite a bit because, as you said, play small because you didn't want to appear egotistical to other people, you know. But I guess if it seems like one day it was almost like I can't live like this anymore. I have to be true to myself. Is that correct? Am I putting words in your mouth?
Well, I realized that I think partly I wanted everything around me to grow, and I was advising and encouraging others to grow. And then I realized, but if I'm holding myself back, what example am I setting? Do you understand? So in a way, I understood that concept hit me really hard, that evolution requires us all. So if you're on a ladder, you need to go up the next rung to free up the space for the next person to climb up. So that kind of hit me quite hard during the pandemic because I was trying to understand why people I had been really, really pushing and trying to help grow were not growing. And I realized because I was not setting a good example. And in a way, I had to set that good example. And it wasn't comfortable. And, it's not, I don't want anyone listening to me to assume that being authentic and vulnerable is easy. Well, I now know it's easy because actually I couldn't care less what people think if I've only got 5 minutes to record something and let it go on LinkedIn. I've got that confidence now. But what I'm saying is like, it took a long time to get to that point. And I see and I talk to lots of chief execs in other charities where they're scared about repercussions. I was always very open. I've always been very open with my organization, with my colleagues. In fact, the more I'm doing this, the more like they're cheering me on. They're loving it. And that has been my hardest lesson, that a lot of the judgment was from me and not from other people. And I guess for any of your listeners right now, this is a really, really important point because the judgment is coming from within. It's not an external judgment. We may make assumptions, but if you explain to your line managers, if you are very open and honest to your colleagues, they can see what you're doing. The thing is, there's so many elements to us as human beings. As a woman, there's so many things I like. I like to bake and cook. My job's not going to allow me to do that. They'll say, get away. We're not paying you to cook and bake. Right? But we must, as human beings, find ways to, give ourselves that joy in the things that make us happy. So I find that being a lot more flexible in my work because my employer, my organization enables that. It also means that the rest of the organization, we are actually ahead in terms of culturally how we're changing, because you've got organizations of our size still operating like they were operating 20 years ago, where you've got this small little tiny organization in Waltham Forest that's operating like their leaders way ahead of the sector. And people are now saying to me, oh, Monwara, actually, you've got a point and you're doing things that are really helping. So I'm now using my platform to shine or throw the spotlight on community leadership, because, there are leaders of big companies and organizations, but the community leaders are the people that I think that are in the dark and they need to come out. And those are the people that are doing it silently. And in fact, the sheer fact that they care enough and that they're so passionate, they will have a huge community that will come forward to help them when they want to make transformative change within the community. So, so that's kind of in a nutshell, there's going to be many nutshells, but visibility is visibility.
See, I've seen firsthand how your visibility has evolved over the years, on LinkedIn and all the other things that you've gone to do. Because initially, and you can tell me whether your visibility had a role in this, but you, as you said, you're setting an excellent example as a community leader, because there's not many community leaders who are doing what you're doing, who are showing up, and you show up, I think it's every day, or maybe somewhere like that, where you're posting regularly, you're sharing useful things, you're sharing your thoughts. You introduced LinkedIn Live series over the years. And one of the things that impacted me the most that I saw you do was when you started your project back in Bangladesh, where you're building homes for women. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how your LinkedIn community kind of got involved in that whole process?
That's an amazing example to talk about, because it was an emotional journey for me, because I know I'm a good fundraiser. It's what I've been doing for years. But like to actually see how the light bulb went off in people's minds, and they could see the evidence of what I was talking about, made such a big difference. So when I put a call out and I talked about building homes in Bangladesh for widows and divorcees, you think about impact, you look at the correlation between women living in the UK that have, where we don't have anywhere near the kind of challenges women in Bangladesh face, where, they're extremely vulnerable, they're at risk of rape, they are at risk of being abducted and dying of starvation and living in like the extreme conditions. And you think about, I saw it very much as an opportunity to provide the women in this country to have an opportunity to touch women so far away in another country by doing what they were doing. So for me, it wasn't about being able to raise the funds. It was about bringing a community together, and then everyone playing a role in raising the money. Because as a fundraiser, I could probably do it on my own, but there's no joy in that. The joy comes when people come together. So when I did put it on LinkedIn, we then, a few of my connections on LinkedIn, we created a few meetings. We then went on to climb Ben Nevis. Now, Ben Nevis itself was a personal journey. That's another thing I do in my leadership. So I learned a long time ago, challenges are a great way of building teams. And also challenges bring out the real you. So you can wear a mask as thick as anything, but when you're on a challenge, the mask falls and everyone is seen for who they truly are. And that's why I love a challenge, And so we did the Ben Nevis. Then the challenger in me and the hungry monster that I am, I wanted to find a way also to provide an opportunity for young women to be involved in it. Because I see, like, in terms of vision, I see the huge alignment, but sometimes it's so far apart. Other people may not easily anticipate, okay, if I flick the domino here, it will hit this one, that one, and eventually it will make the impact, or the dot will hit the bullseye. So getting young women who are in college, under like a certain 19 years old, doing this kind of thing. They organized a big event where I said, you're going to make the decisions. I'm going to be there as your mentor and your guide. I gave them a small budget. I told them to stick to it. And they thought it was going to be impossible. But in their efforts, and they were extremely scared of failing, but in their efforts to like step up and seize the opportunity, they actually smashed the target. They did what they thought was not achievable. And that for me was such a big deal. And now, even as I think yesterday I shared with the girls that the first house has completed and we're going to start the second house in a week's time. And they just couldn't believe it. One house completed. Obviously, the second house will be complete, will start actually in a week's time. So it's such an exciting thing that we managed to achieve together. And this is the thing I said to you earlier about the self-belief side. I have such strong self-belief, and that can come across as being too confident sometimes. But I think a lot of it has to do with reflecting back to all the things I've achieved in life, where sometimes in the most incredibly challenging and daunting circumstances, it's made me realize that I can do a lot of things. And I don't normally say it out loud because due to fear of being judged as being overconfident. But, the young women were given an opportunity, and this is the problem. There's not enough opportunities for young women to excel and to shine and to believe in themselves. Because when we start believing in ourselves, we are then able to step up and take accept greater opportunities or even ask for them. Because as you will probably bring up at some point, the other thing that we're not very good at is asking. So I, when I was working with these young women, picked up so much of it, and it did really help me to shape my leadership program, the Trailblazer program, because I started off in one way, and even the work with the young women was almost like running that Trailblazer program. And you get to the end because there's 6 elements of the program, and the first few sessions are very much focused on self-awareness, empowerment, and it's not each of those areas that we work with the women is not just focused at the internal but also the external. So there's something in the self-awareness around learning about yourself, but also learning about others that you work with. Because if you can't do that, it's really hard to lead a particular team if you can't understand other people. Similarly, with empowerment, you've got self-empowerment where you are tapping into your own inner champion. But at the same time, you need to be able to ask for help and tap into your network to empower you to go further. So that whole journey around building houses, it started off with the idea of 2, but the innovator in me, each time we go to build a new house, it's nice to do a different kind of fundraiser. So right now, for next year, I'm planning to go international on a challenge, and some of my LinkedIn contacts are going to be part of that, and they've already expressed interest. So this is going to be really exciting. I'm not going to tell you which country. It won't be Bangladesh, but we will be traveling abroad, and we'll be traveling for 3-4 days to not traveling for 3-4 days, but it will be a trip for 3-4 days where we climb a mountain and raise money.
Ooh, you've got my ears perking up, because like you, Monwara, I am very much into challenges and challenging myself, and like you, I think I kind of have an innate self-belief as well, which is for me is also further underscored by my faith as well. And in terms of what is possible for me to achieve in life, there's no limits, and sometimes we don't know what's possible for us until we press through that challenge. So I definitely want to hear more about that, about what you're planning for next year. But in terms of that, as we kind of round up on this, because visibility in itself, that can be a challenge, because again, sometimes people feel, I was one of those people, because I'm an introvert by nature. I know you're the opposite, because we've had these conversations, right? I know you're an extrovert by nature, but I'm an introvert by nature. And I used to think that in front of the speech marks, in front of the camera stuff, the onstage stuff, all of that kind of stuff is reserved for certain types of people who just have it naturally, So, and I used to think that when I was a lot younger, that you're either naturally confident and ready to be visible or you're not. But actually, I've learned that that's not the truth, that you can get to a place where you constantly push yourself past your comfort zone until it's no longer uncomfortable and it becomes a new level of comfort, and then you push to the next comfort zone, etc., etc. So how has your evolution in visibility been? How has that journey been for you? Have you grown from confidence to confidence to confidence, and or has it kind of been like, you know, as somebody who, as you said, had this innate belief in yourself, did you from the get-go think, I'm going to do this, I got this, and I'm going to stick with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my confidence has grown, and to the point where, like, you know, I'm doing a lot more. The whole introversy and extroversy thing, it's not true. I do like to talk, but I've always judged myself very harshly when it comes to public speaking. And I think I've said this before, growing up in a inner city area, living in a council estate, and believing that you could only go so far. I still remember the times when I would stand in front of the mirror and practice speaking because I wanted to make sure that I spoke well enough, because I'd entered the legal profession and I wanted to fit in, right? So I would practice making sure I wasn't using swear words. Some people might be really shocked. Yes, I did used to use those words when I was a teenager. But when I hit university, it was like, and this is the thing, like, even as we're talking now, it's hitting me, like, we always have control over those things. And even then, I had this ability to adapt in those circumstances and start talking posh in front of my lecturers because I wanted to fit in. So it's all very interesting, especially the reflective side of things. And I think as I'm growing more and more confident, in fact, I have been doing more interviews. I have been more active on YouTube. My following is increasing. How do I juggle that with my work? Well, I've got to say I have the most amazing team, but I have to do my job too, and I have certain targets to meet. So long as I'm meeting my targets, I can still do that. And I think something that I want to advocate, especially for women of my age in their 40s, my children have flown the nest. So my children are my daughter's at uni, she'll be back soon, but my children are a lot older. So I think, like, you know, I was talking to a couple of women recently who were interested in my coaching, was, you know, people think you get to a certain age and you've spent your entire life just focusing on your children and your full-time job, and there's no time for me. I want to really seriously point out that 40s and when your children are older is the time for you. I kind of feel like now is my time and nothing's going to stop me. And what you said earlier about this innate and a lot of feeling, and it comes from faith. I'm a firm believer, I guess, whether you want to call it faith, spirituality, for those who don't, you know, believe in a particular faith. But I do feel like the thoughts wouldn't be put in my head or planted in my head or my heart if I wasn't meant to do it. That's how I see it. And I guess that's where a lot of my confidence comes from. And when people say to me, you're doing too much, I don't want to argue, but I'm only doing as much as I know I can do based on what I've been able to do. How many 17, 18-year-old girls have you known who've been like a carer for their elderly mother or mentally ill mother at the same time as holding down a job and doing 3 A-levels, you know, especially when they were told they weren't capable. And I have to keep on rubbing on about it. But and on top of that, volunteering in the local community center, the youth club, being a trustee on a board. How many 18, 19, 20-year-olds do you know that could juggle so much at that age. So if I was always an octopus, how are you going to change me now? You know, they say practice makes you, if you try to master something consistently, the longer you do it, it becomes easy for you. So you try and apply that to my circumstances. A chief exec of a small charity has to be spinning plates all the time. This is why I'm master of the role that I play, because I know how to spin those plates. I've been learning since I was 18 and I've never really stopped. So when you say, and lots of people say to me, Monwara, you're doing too much. What you don't realize is, as Monwara is becoming more and more confident, and as Monwara is realizing how she needs to grow and get to the next level, Monwara is also realizing that she needs teams to do things. So I have teams in Bangladesh. You know, I have a teacher that I pay in Bangladesh, and there are several people I pay nothing, but they do it because they want to do it. When people are passionate about something and they understand the outcome or the impact, your word, impact, they will do it. They will do it. So I don't have to force anyone, but some people may see that as, oh, is it manipulation? Because I've had that as well. But you're only going to, surely, Mildred, you're only going to do what you feel passionate about doing.
Yeah.
I'm just
yeah. And I think actually there's a word that you kept saying several times about visibility being the evidence, you know, of the things. There's one thing saying I can do this, I'm doing this, but when you're visible about it, people can see the evidence of your leadership. They can see your posts. They can see you over there with the pictures from Bangladesh and the houses you've built. They can see you doing these things. It's easy to believe in somebody like that, because now it's like, okay, this person is credible. I can see that she's going places. I can see evidence of the things that she's done in the past, and I hear from her on a regular basis. I'm hearing from Monwara regularly. So now I'm sold. You know, whatever it is you're selling, I'm sold. So people buy into your vision, and then it's easy for them to buy from you or buy into the vision that you have and help you express that. And that comes from, part of that comes from the visibility and you expressing that on the platform like LinkedIn and beyond.
Yeah, and it's that continuous impact. Why should it just be me and my small group of band of men and women that build houses? Why not, like every village in Bangladesh, a group of people come together and build a home for a woman and her daughters? So that's one of the things I'm looking into at the moment. I want to develop some sort of a blueprint that I can then sell, but you can call it sell, but like it's more about, I keep thinking about, how do I scale this up? How do I multiply it? Because what me, myself, and the group that have achieved by climbing Ben Nevis can be done by so many people. Like, to build a house in Bangladesh, it only cost us £1,600. That's nothing compared to, like, that's even less than a person's monthly salary, right? So I would love to see more people doing that, because there's not enough of me or enough of Veronica or enough of, Kate or Gula, whoever was on those challenges. Again, that is also the mind thinking, okay, how do I multiply the impact? I'm talking about it now. And I hope that anyone listening and wants to learn, I want to be able to teach people how to do it so that people can have that impact.
Fantastic. And I do hope that if you are listening to this and this resonates in any way, please do reach out to Monwara via LinkedIn, and I'll get her to share where in just a few seconds, but do reach out and plug into her vision, because it is really amazing what she's planning to do, the even greater good she's planning to do in the world. Okay, so Monwara, before you let us know how we can get hold of you, Can you leave us with one final thought in terms of, on the whole visibility scale, if somebody's listening to this and they're on the fence about whether or not they should start being visible right now where they are, what advice would you give to them?
What advice would I give to them? I would say everything starts with looking within you. Have a think about or reflect on your own personal journey up until now. And there will be lots of clues of how you have led yourself up to this point. And I think I would like to see more women to disrupt the current status quo by taking on the leadership helm. You know, if there's a position, go for it. Because if you reflect, you will find that you absolutely already have the courage within you and all the necessary skills to step up. Your lived experience is a big clue. The only thing I would say is make sure that you are connecting and networking with the right people, finding a mentor who can actually guide you through the process, because it's not easy. And I have had to lean on lots of people on my journey, Mildred. So I would say, if you are serious about growing yourself as a leader, please consider how you can connect with your existing network and lean on people. Find yourself a mentor, coach, and just get started. You know, you've got to start somewhere. It's never going to be the right time or the right place. Just get started, and on the journey, you will learn and you will grow.
Awesome. That's brilliant. Brilliant. Just get started, which is what this show is about. Start being visible. Start being visible. Monwara, thank you so much for your time today. Where can we find out more about you? How do you want people to connect with you if they want to know more?
The best place to connect with me is probably LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile, but also have a YouTube channel with the handle Monwara Ali. You'll find me on my YouTube channel, and, you know, feel free to send me messages. And if you've got some questions, also via my LinkedIn. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, brilliant. Well, that brings us to a close for another edition of Start Being Visible podcast. So I don't know about you, but I'm so inspired by all the great conversations that we're having on this show. So if you have enjoyed today's conversation, please like, please rate, please review, and most importantly, please subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our weekly episodes. But for now, thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you, Mildred.
And I look forward to seeing you on Start Being Visible.